Hello. Hey, friends. How's it going? Welcome to the Future Belongs to Creators podcast. I am Haley with my regular guest hosts, Charlie and Miguel, and we have a special guest today, Mandi, who you all have heard me definitely talk about before. She runs the show for Happy Houseplant and really built her business, kicking off with her blog Vintage Revivals, which has been very successful over the years. So we get to have a really awesome guest today I'm very excited about. And yeah, how's everyone doing today?
So good. I'm so excited to be here. I mean, anytime I get to hang out with Haley, I'm like, yep, sign me up. Tell me where and when.
I was saying before we started recording that I was trying to position where I'm sitting today to cover. There's a yellow leaf on the Monstera behind me that I was embarrassed for Mandi to see because I do follow her Instagram account and take her plant care advice, and clearly didn't do well with this one.
I embrace yellow leaves all day long. I actually never take yellow leaves off of my plants. I wait for the plants to naturally release them. And so I'm like, good, you have yellow leaf. Your plant is growing and doing good.
I'm the opposite.
Since we're sharing plant failures, I'm going to jump on the bandwagon here. So I build shelves for plants. I don't actually do the plant thing. That's my wife's realm. But there is one cactus that I have on my desk, and it died. And I got really sad because I realized that I was less nurturing than a desert.
Okay, no, Mandi and I have had this conversation a lot of times. That is fake news. Cactuses are not, it is not easy to keep cactuses alive. So just that's fake news.
I specifically picked a cactus because I'm like, there's no way I can murder this damn thing. But
I feel like, especially Miguel, where you have so much humidity, I don't think cactus, especially if it's a desert cactus, I mean, it's okay. Everyone's just figuring it out.
I mean, he hung in there. He died way slower than most of
the other plants.
Which I don't know if that's a positive or not, to be honest. I gave it a slow, grueling death.
Yes. I think that that's why people are like, oh, they're so easy. Not because they're like taking care of them the right way, because cactus need like the most intense light, but because they just die slower than other things. So they're like, I'm succeeding.
I specifically pick something that thrives on neglect.
Yeah.
No, every cactus I have ever had has died, every one. And what happens is they just slowly shrivel and they get like mold in the inside. It's just, you know, so
gross.
Interesting. I am not a cactus.
Me neither.
Lover. So I like don't even think I have any cactus. So I don't have any advice. Sorry.
Well, let's kick us off with our first segment of the day. Have you heard? And I am going to start today. As you know, this segment is just where we say a quick something quick that's happening in the creator economy that we all should know about. And as the world knows, Ukraine is being invaded by Russia, and there is so much news and so much information about it, and it feels like impossible to retain it all and to keep up and to understand. And one of my favorite content creators of all time, you've heard me talk about her several times. Her name is Sharon McMahon. Sharon Says So is her Instagram handle. I was actually saying earlier, I think Mandi is the one that actually introduced me to her, maybe when she was like 20,000 followers. But her content right now is something that the entire world just like needs to have access to see, to understand what's going on. It's really consumable. It helps you understand the history of why things are happening. And I think she's just a content creator that's doing really good, important, and necessary work for the world. So if you need a resource, she is a fantastic resource. I will say one other resource on this topic is actually the daily podcast with what's his name? Someone help me out.
Michael Barbaro.
From the New York Times.
Barbaro. Yeah. Yes. He had a really good episode a few weeks ago that described Putin's address, like on Monday. I think it was right before they invaded. And they kind of work through the address when they took over the national airways to describe it. And he explained like pretty much all of the historical context as to why Russia felt that they could or should invade Russia. So that's another really good educational resource if anyone is interested. Charlie.
I'm going to say mine is like so superficial compared to what you shared. Because I love seeing creators really step up and I don't know, like curate the news and things like this during this time when there is so much happening. But my have you heard for us today is that TikTok is expanding into long form videos. You're going to be able to upload TikToks of up to like 10 minutes in length, I think is what they're planning for. And maybe some accounts already have it. Don't quite know that much, but it's just interesting that we had every other app try and become TikTok, and now TikTok is trying to become the other apps. And I don't know how it's going to go for them, honestly. I was seeing people, like creators I follow, tweeting today, I go to TikTok for short videos. I go to YouTube for long videos. I do not care to watch YouTube shorts. I do not care to watch TikTok longs, I think is what the joke is that they said. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this goes and if creators take it up and what TikTok does with it. I think your have you heard for the day is in a similar vein though, Miguel.
Yeah. So mine is about IGTV, Instagram TV. You may have heard of it. You may have every time that you're on Instagram, I feel like they were trying really, really hard to kind of like push on this IGTV.
Make it a thing.
Make it a thing. Well, despite their best efforts, IGTV, which was announced in 2018, now in the 2022 year of our Lord, it is now defunct. They've decided that they do not want to have, I think they're still going to have some version of IGTV on the Instagram app. I think the hardest sell was, hey, download an entirely different app just for IGTV. And when you
can I confess something?
They have to have. Yeah.
I didn't know that it was a separate app. I never knew that existed.
Well,
not either.
Chalk that up to the failure of Meta to really send people over. I mean, Instagram's tried this before. I think they have other companion apps to Instagram. Like I think they have like that layout app so that you can do multiple things. But that's usually kind of like a tool that helps you kind of like fine tune your content and then put it back on Instagram. This is just like a whole nother app. And I guess so. This actually made me think of something else since we're on the topic of this. And one thing that I've always wanted Instagram to have is an iPad app. And it's like one of those big things where everybody's like, why doesn't it have an iPad app? Whenever I try to look at it on my iPad, it's like that tiny little cropped version, and you can zoom in and make everything look
And then
like
the
shit.
keyboard's massive.
Yeah. So, and it's like really grainy and low resolution, but hopefully this frees up some bandwidth for the Instagram team to maybe finally do an iPad app, because from what I understand, the Instagram team is actually surprisingly small in compared to the other Meta things. So, anyways, bye bye IGTV. Hopefully, hello iPad app.
You know, as annoying as this kind of stuff is, you got to give it to Meta or Facebook or Instagram or whatever we want to call them, for like trying things out and failing and just moving on.
True.
You know,
Yep.
like that's one thing that as a big company, I feel like can be hard to do. And they're like, no, we're going to do this. They can still be successful even if they fail because they're so massive. But it is a really good lesson, I think, to learn. Like, I don't know, at least that's how I operate. I'm like, just try it. Doesn't have to be perfect. Like, you know, put it out there. I'm more of like a run and gun kind of person. Mandi over here is more of a perfectionist. You might learn that in this conversation, but she doesn't put anything out unless it's absolutely perfect. Anyways, that's a good segue. Let's move on to introducing again my dear friend, Mandi Gubler from, like I said, Happy Houseplant and Vintage Revivals. Mandi, why don't you kick us off by giving us an introduction of yourself and who you are, and we'll start there.
Holy cow, I'm so excited. So I am Mandi Gubler. I live in Santa Clara, Utah, the very southwest corner. For people that are unfamiliar with that part of Utah, it's I'm about 35 minutes outside of Zion National Park. So it's very beautiful, very hot in the summer and dry. And I have a really wonderful, supportive, like the world's best husband, and 3 children. I have an 18-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And so we just have like a lot going on all the time. I started Vintage Revivals in 2010 when blogs were very new. And the only way to find other blogs was through like linky parties, and there was no social media. It was just blogs, and you had kind of this like really beautiful community, like the comment section. You got to know people so well, and it was just like your people. And so since then we've like grown Vintage Revivals, and I don't know, what else do you
what are some of the like biggest successes that Vintage Revivals has had, just to give the people like some, you know, context to like where it started and where it is now?
So when I started, I literally had 0 DIY skills. Like I actually didn't know anything. And I would go to the thrift store and buy really ugly furniture and spray paint it like a crazy bright color and glaze it. I don't know if you guys remember glazing. That was a very fun little trend for a while. And slowly over a decade, our projects got bigger and bigger and bigger. So 5 years ago, we bought a building. It's the Santa Clara Mercantile Store. So it's a 100-year-old mercantile that had kind of been relatively abandoned for the better part of 25 years, and decided to turn it into our house. So we did that. We actually did a TV show with Magnolia.
Cool.
The show is called In With the Old, and our episode is the first episode. So they have a whole bunch of footage from when we started the renovation that we filmed ourselves, and then they came in and filmed the second half of the renovation, and it is so beautiful. It makes me cry every single time I watch it. So that's probably like our biggest thing. Lots of
huge.
And, you know, just lots of stuff.
Lots of stuff. So to give you more context though, like her style of DIY, if you aren't familiar, is that like She did cut and designed and did all the flooring in her entire house to include like penny tile and like raw wood and like designed it all. Like nobody ever came in and was like, I'm going to lay floors in her house. I'm going to do the sheetrock. I'm going to do this. Like they literally did everything.
We actually, in our bathroom, in our primary bathroom, we actually made our own tile. Like, because I couldn't find the color that I wanted and the size that I wanted. And we were on like a crazy deadline with the show. And so we made our own tile. So like those kind of projects, I just really love the experience of creating things. Like I built this couch. Ta-da! And I feel like I definitely am not a trend follower. I'm usually a few years ahead of trends when people are like, what? That's weird. And then people catch on like a few years later.
So maybe like now you can buy those tiles in the right color and size.
But like, in the right color and the right size. Exactly.
No, you're right. I was just thinking maybe I should buy a warehouse and turn it into my house. So you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah, 100%. Tell the people because this will like kind of set the stage for where the rest of the conversation goes, but tell the people like your different streams of income that you had with Vintage Revivals. So sponsorships, right? So on and so forth, traffic, kind of give like a general idea of just what the income streams were that you had.
Yeah, so definitely the majority of our income was with sponsored content. I kind of took an approach really early on that was very different from what a lot of my peers were doing, where I made a list of companies that were like my dream companies to work with. And that I like worked with them or held out until I could work with them. So like, most of my partnerships I've had for the better part of a decade. So we do stuff every year with Sherwin-Williams because their paint is the best. We do stuff with the Home Depot. And that was something that was really important to me when everyone was like talking about all these different paint lines and different posts. And for me, that just felt really inauthentic and like, like you're clearly just doing this because you're getting paid. Like, what do you actually like? So it's really important for me to have like stuff that I really stood behind. And so that works out really well with sponsors. I mean, at first I felt like everyone was getting all of these like small opportunities and I was working for free paint. But in the long run, way better, guys. way better. So that was something that I did, and I think that helped a lot with what our sponsorship rates were, and just kind of the expectations that we set. Haley will tell you, I like she mentioned, I am very much perfectionist in that I will work at something until it is exactly what I want it to be before I share it. And that's really hard for a creative because I'm also not a planner and I'm like not consistent. And so it creates a situation that thankfully my partners that I've worked with, my sponsorships, they understand that they have to give me a deadline to a week to 2 weeks before they actually need the content, because I get this crazy rush of inspiration right at the very end. And I'm going to change everything. Give me like 3 more days. And they just know it. And I'm their favorite and also their least favorite because I deliver really great, amazing content. And also I will never send them an invoice because I just forget.
Yeah, that would be great for the brands involved. But it sounds like for Vintage Revivals, the majority of your income was coming from sponsorships and from like essentially promoting other people's products.
Yeah,
whereas
we definitely did. We had a fair amount of traffic. You know, like we made an okay, or we still make an okay amount, just like on ad revenue and that kind of stuff. And we had a few different products that we launched that were kind of like this DIY/buy version where like, here's the tutorial to do this. And also if you want to buy it, you can buy the finished product. And
nice.
so that was really interesting for me because up until we launched that like a couple of years ago, my audience only ever came to me for projects. Like me selling them a product that we designed, that was like really abnormal. And so it was kind of like one foot on either side of the fence, right? Like, here's the DIY if you want to DIY something. And also, if you want to buy it, here is the link and you can buy it from our shop. So we did that with a few different products, which was great. But yeah, that was like the majority of how we made money. Definitely sponsorships was like our biggest.
Yeah. And then if you had to like sum up as far as vintage revivals go, you know, one of the biggest challenges, and which will kind of like help us transition into what you're doing now with Happy Houseplant, was that you were in this situation where in order for you to continue, like you always had this mega massive project going. So you were like the definition of a content hamster wheel, meaning like you were constantly either creating something and doing something, building something for the Merc. And then you were also writing the content for the last project that you did to meet a deadline. But then you had to start another project, and it was not sustainable in that it was your house. Like you were trying to get it done because it was your like place. Like most of your content came around like projects around your house. So like it does make it a little bit more like exciting versus other types of DIY projects. But you lived in that world of like content hamster wheel, right? Like you were just constantly.
100%. And truthfully, I really love the creative process. Like for me, I'm not driven by money or status or really anything other than experience. I love learning new things. And so to take on a project like figuring out how to make tile, like that is when I am my best self, is when I'm like trying to do things and failing and like reworking things. And so I feel like the reason I was able to do vintage revivals for a decade is because every project was a new project. And I rarely did projects that were the same. You see that a lot with people who constantly are like publishing really, really similar content, really similar build plans, all of that kind of stuff. And for me, I just wanted to do cool stuff. And so it worked out really well. But definitely things took a definite shift for me, I would say, when we were filming the TV show, because we had such a tight, hard deadline to get our renovation finished. We could only get so far in the renovation before they had to come and film again. And so it was really hard. And renovation just by itself is freaking exhausting. Like, you're breathing in drywall dust. You have no idea where any of your tools are. Like, it is hard just in and of itself. And then like I had to document everything for vintage revivals, and then also the show. Like it was just a lot, and it made me just kind of burn out a little bit. And I'm so grateful that for the year prior to filming, like we had been working on Happy Houseplant, so that when I really was like, I have to step away from this because I can't mentally and emotionally do it right now, we had this other business that was doing great and that like fills me up, and I still get to like use all the skills that I've developed. And so that's been such an amazing blessing that I didn't even know that. Because how many times, Haley, was I like, I don't think I can do both of these. It's so hard.
I know. We met in, you guys, Miguel and Charlie, you've heard this story, but ConvertKit was actually sponsoring. Actually, it wasn't a sponsorship. We get to go to, like, ConvertKit pays for us to go to a conference for our own education. And I think I went to a conference, Alt Summit, and I went with my good friend, Kirsten Grove, who runs a popular blog called Simply Grove. And she's a designer as well. And Kirsten and Mandi knew each other, and I was pregnant at the time with my 2.5-year-old, and so Kirsten and I were doing our thing, and they knew each other, and then we just somehow pretty much connected and hung out the entire conference. Like that was pretty much all we did, and we started talking about. I'll never forget it. It's actually funny if you go back on like Kirsten's Instagram. There's a post somewhere where it's like her documenting Mandi and I just talking about plants for like literally for like hours, and she was like a third wheel, and there was, we were just talking plants the whole time. And I think at that conference we were sitting watching, maybe it was, I don't remember who was like on the main stage or something, but we were somewhere, and obviously they weren't memorable. The conversation that Mandi and I was memorable about like killing ferns or something like that. And yeah, and we started talking about digital products, about like how you make money selling digital products. And that's where she was kind of referencing having like one foot in the door about, selling like plans to something that she was doing versus like Vintage Revivals, where she was just putting out content. And we started talking about like what that could look like. And then I'll never forget, she called me and we were like in my sunroom and we were talking about this idea, and then Happy Houseplant, this like general idea or loose idea just kind of like formulated, and we're like, let's run with it. And as everyone here on the podcast knows, I've obviously since left the the partnership, friend, business, whatnot, and Mandi ran with it. And she now is in a situation where her primary business, not that Vintage Revivals has, I don't want to say sunset. It's not like you sunset Vintage Revivals, because you certainly still manage content and produce and share content on Vintage Revivals. But you moved into this more sustainable business model where you took this audience that you had from Vintage Revivals and you moved it over to this other business that serves you differently, to where now what you're doing is educating people, but also selling physical goods. So you don't have like one foot all in one thing or one foot all in the other. You're actually doing two things where you're, like I said, educating them. That's the content that you're sharing, and then you're selling the physical goods. And I think it's a really interesting, it's a fabulous business model. But talk to us about how like that has like really changed your life, or changed like, like
I'm curious to hear what's more sustainable about it for you. Because to me, I'm like, so you turned one business into two and somehow that makes things better? What?
So it's really interesting. So before we went to Alt Summit and I met Haley and we were like instant soulmates, I have some friends who are food bloggers, and food bloggers are the best. And they make all of their money from ads, like traffic to their site. And like, it makes you want to kind of throw up a little bit when you're hearing how much money they're making just from traffic. So I got really heavy into SEO and figuring out how to optimize the content that I was publishing. And plant content has really high search. And so I was originally creating these kind of quick guides on Vintage Revivals that still get a lot of traffic. I probably should go back and like update them and change some of the information I'm sure that I shared that's not complete. But so I was originally going that direction. I was going to like turn Vintage Revivals into this DIY and plant space, because the reason is because plants are such a huge part of a well-designed space. Like they just have to be, you have to have life in a space.
Charlie, your wall would not look nearly as cool if you didn't have that Monstera behind you. It just
right.
Wouldn't.
Agreed. Yep. Agreed.
Like, right. Well designed. You have this beautiful art gallery wall with all these amazing, like, designers that you've loved. And you have a plant covering up like at least a third of them.
I have a plant covering up an Anthony Burrell.
Yes.
So I felt like there was this huge chasm between like people who were in my space that were not plant people, but they knew that they could get traffic by sharing plant content, and they wanted to be helpful. Like they wanted to tell people how to take care of the fiddle leaf fig that they just shot in their living room. And so there was a lot of incorrect information being shared. And then the plant space is extremely overwhelming if you don't care about the science of plants. Like you just want to keep a plant alive in your house so that your house looks beautiful. And I was like, oh guys, I can do this. Like, I can straddle this chasm because I understand these people and I understand these people. And like, let's marry it into really relatable information that's actually like real. So then talking to Haley, talking about digital guides, I was like, heck yes, totally gonna do a digital guide for vintage revivals. That was the plan. It was like a fiddly fig guide on vintage revivals. Sorry, my dogs are sunning. And so then talking to her, and I love big ideas. Like, no idea is too small. Like, for sure, give me 100-year-old building made out of dirt and like let me turn it into my house. And so talking to Haley and kind of figuring out what this could potentially turn into was so fun. And then it went from being a digital guide to being its own business to being a business with product, which was something really interesting because for so long, I knew that I needed to have a physical product. I have a really good friend who's been such a great mentor to me, Jenny Commenda from Juniper Print and also Juniper Home. And when she started her print shop, I remember talking to her and she was like, you have to have a physical product. Like, it is so much better than just doing sponsorships and being kind of on this content creation hamster wheel. And so
just for some context real quick though, Jenny's business is that she sells either digital downloads of artwork or the same artwork that she will ship to you printed on a specific type of like paper that's beautiful and well designed. And then she provides like IKEA style kind of like directions on how you can get really large, beautiful artwork in your home for like a really fraction of the cost. So her business was both physical products and digital products. And she was mentoring Mandi into how to kind of like duplicate that version of her business into Mandi's business with a happy houseplant and the monetary benefits of what that would actually look like.
Yeah. Gotcha. And she had been blogging in the DIY home design space for a decade. So it was a very like seamless transition for her. And for so many years, I was like, I gotta have a product. What can I do? And I like tried all these different things and nothing really stuck until Happy Houseplant. And it's just the best. So
what is the product?
So we actually have quite a few products and are coming out with a lot of other really cool, fun, exciting ones. Our main product is called Plant Food. It is a fertilizer that is so amazing. And we sell it in this really cute starter kit because I know who our target demographic is. It is me. It is my sisters. It is people who want plants in their house to make their house beautiful. Like, they're not the type of people who are going to like put a grow tent in their living room with like blue and red lights. Like, those are not our people. Our people are people who want to know what cute planter they should get that has
really.
It's all about education, right? Like,
your person was somebody that would buy a fiddly fig 50 times over and kill it every time because they're like, well, I'm going to put it because they liked the look of it in the face, right? And when they would go to Home Depot, they would look at the back of like a soil or a fertilizer and be like niacinamide or blah, 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 75% of polyphosphorus semina, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, I don't know what any of this means, so I guess I just won't buy it. Or they're confused by it, right? That was your person. Your person didn't want to know or didn't want to understand the science behind fertilizer or soil or whatever. It was somebody that was like, I just want my house to be fucking beautiful.
And I want the best. I want the results. I just don't want to have to learn about plant fertilizer on top of taking care of my kids and keeping my house up and doing projects and running carpool and all of that stuff. Like, that's just a lot.
Yeah, I don't care enough about it to like have to do the research. Will someone just do the research? Like, whenever, so my wife is way better at this. So whenever I have, whenever I'm outside, I'm just like, just point at the ones you want me to water and then tell me the ones I shouldn't water. And then just like tell me how often I should do it. And then she starts like getting into like, well, this one you sometimes have to water, but don't. But it also depends on if it rained recently and like how much sunlight it's getting. But sometimes if it's a cloudy day, I'm just like, all right, I'm out. Just tell me what I put water on, please. I'm just like, I want them to live, but I don't care enough to like really get into the
Right.
nitty gritty about it.
There's
Just
so
tell me
much
what to do and I'll do it.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's kind of what Happy Houseplant is. Like I learn everything and then I filter it through like Gossip Girl analogies and different, like we're sharing the best information that actually helps people. We have the most amazing products and we're coming out with like some really, really exciting ones. And it's working because it's what people want. Like
you want to idiot proof the product. You don't want a product that doesn't make the thing actually easier to do. It's just another thing to learn. I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah.
It's the same about like it's for me, like in my world, it's like software. It's like, what good is a software tool that I have to like spend the entire day in like some knowledge base learning how it works?
Yeah.
I just show me some buttons to do the thing that I want to do, and then anything that's difficult to learn, I want you to make it easy for me. You know, and if it requires more work, then this tool isn't helping. It's just another homework assignment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Really, at the end of the day, what Mandi did is she solved a problem for her audience, right? And the problem is that I don't know how to take care of plants. I want my house to look pretty, and so I'm going to dumb down this really complicated information and I'm going to make it really easy and really consumable for you to understand.
And so beautiful. Like we spend so much time on product design and like customer experience when they're opening the package. Like we have a different new sticker and insert and like, I mean, all the time, anytime we have to reorder anything, I'm like, can we just redesign it so it's like new and fresh and fun? And because I think that is like, I mean, that's what I want. I want something that works and that is easy to use and that adds to like the aesthetic of my house and makes me feel like I am doing a good job. And that's kind of what Happy Houseplant does. So it's been really fun. So fun.
And is the reason that it has been more sustainable for you because you've hit on this product that your audience wants, right? It's perfect for them. So it's kind of like you're not struggling for every sale. Like the sales are coming in from the content you're already producing. And you have to rely less on the sponsorships, on like getting the right sponsor, on making sure you're getting the traffic and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely different than a sponsorship type business model because, well, first of all, like we were doing hard renovation, which is a lot like that. It's exhausting. And so I just like not doing that and being able to like repot a plant and like that's my content that I created for the day.
I would take that over like hand cutting 10,000 different like individual pieces of wood to design like a star floor.
Totally. It's so different. It's so different. And so it helps it so that I can focus more on product and on like working with, my team and our chemist and like all of this stuff that makes it so that we can do really cool things. And so I feel like it's just so different. And the most thing I'm going to try to not cry, but the best part of all of it is that I feel like I'm just giving people the information and the tools, and then they're taking it and they like can take care of plants now. Like they get new leaves on their plants. And so they share it in stories and they send me messages and I don't even have words for how beautiful that is for me to know that like this person feels great about themselves because they were able to figure out how to get their stupid fiddly fig to stop dropping leaves. Like, it makes me so happy. And so we always are resharing stories like that people tag us in every day. We share our stories, and it's like great for advertising, of course, you know, because like people love seeing those results. But for me, the reason that I share them is because I want those people to know that like I saw that and I'm so proud of them, because it's a big deal. It's a big deal when you like take something that you struggled with and then you figure it out and you're proud enough to share it. Like it makes me so happy.
And you know what, Mandi, that genuine emotion that you're showing right now, it comes through in your content. Because like I said, I've been following your content, and like the way I was joking before when I was like pointing out the yellow leaf, because I know from following your content that you wouldn't actually judge me for it. And that's what's beautiful about what you're doing, and like, yeah, how you're making people feel about plants is because it comes from this genuine place. You're not sharing this content because you want to sell the product. You're sharing it because you genuinely want to help, and the product is just another way that you want to help. So yeah, you're doing a wonderful thing.
And you know what? It's so funny because it is scientifically, for anybody out there that's listening that needs to hear this, it's scientifically proven that plants make you happy, right? Like, I'm not going to give the science back to just, you know, like it boosts your serotonin, whatever. Plants are scientifically proven, to make you happy. Hence the name Happy Houseplant. So when you buy this thing, or let's say you were given a gift, oftentimes plants are given gifts to people when you lose a loved one, right? And let's say that you lose a loved one and you take one of their plants, a pothos, some like, for the most part, like a pretty easy plant to take care of, and you kill it. That's the worst feeling in the world, right? When you repeatedly murder a plant, you know, like how many, you know, it's like we have a Slack group at work called PlantKit, you know, ConvertKit, PlantKit, you know, and lots of people will come on there and do what Miguel did. And they'll be like, I killed a cactus. I have a terrible, you know, everybody is so genuinely like, how could I do this? I killed it again. And it's amazing when, even though this is like in the grand scheme of the world, like they're just plants. The point is that we live really heavy lives, like whether the life is we're living a life because of what's happening in Ukraine, or because of COVID the last 2 years, or because, you know, like insert issues with parenting, insert issues with mental health, right? All those things. These little sorts of wins, these little wins where you accomplish something that you are in full control of, are things that actually like make you feel good and proud of yourself. And if Mandi was able to do that with Happy Houseplant to hundreds of thousands of people that have bought plant food to date, maybe not quite hundreds of thousands, but I feel like you're probably close there, you know, somewhere real close.
Yeah.
Because plants are this universal love language is what it is.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that creators have a strong emotional connection to the things that they do, because if you feel passionate enough about something to make it what you do, then you are really invested in it, probably more than most people would be. And plants are one of those things that, like, unlike most things, they grow and they change, and they're a reflection of the effort that you put into them. And that's why they're so special. I mean, I'm not really even a plant guy, but we had this plant that I bought for when we had a crappy apartment in Seattle. And our apartment, like our coffee table was like the box that we put our clothes in. And I just put like a little sheet over it. I'm like, boom, coffee table. But I walked down to a flower shop and I bought a little plant, and I'm like, and I put it on that little coffee table. And that little guy like came with us 3,000 miles when we drove all the way back to Florida. And he was doing so great and he was doing so good. And I don't know what happened, but eventually I think he got some bugs on him or something and he died. And that was like destroyed because it was more than just a plant. It was he came so far from Seattle, and it was like he was our one plant in our little crappy apartment, and so like we get emotionally attached to these things, and as creators, like to zoom out of the whole plant thing is just creators as a whole. They put their like soul into something. It really matters a lot when they connect with other people on that same level about that thing that they care a lot about, whether it's a piece of furniture that you build, a plant that you grow, a video that you make on YouTube. And Alejandro said something about it too here. Thanks for highlighting that, which is creator-led businesses connect better and solve actual problems because creators care. And I think that's
yeah. And it's obvious, right? It's obvious through the content creators make. That care is there, which is why Mandi's obviously hit on something so special.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's been such a fun transition for me, and I'm actually trying to figure out what to do next. So Jenny,
always.
Jenny told me like, probably when would it have been like 2 years ago, Haley?
Yeah, probably.
She was like, you will not be able to do both Vintage Revivals and Happy Happy Houseplant. You will have to choose because it's not sustainable. And you should choose Happy Happy Houseplant. And it was so hard for me because my identity was Vintage Revivals. Like I was Mandi from Vintage Revivals. People knew me. People knew like that name. It meant
we'd go to conferences and like at Alt Summit, literally people would flock to her and they're like, it's Mandi. And I'm like, I mean, Charlie, you've experienced this to some level, you know, like this, like celebrity, like people are so attracted to you in that way. Like you are Charlie Marie.
Only at little nerdy design conferences. Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like seriously, like I'd be like standing there on the side next to her and be like, are they done yet? Are they done yet? No, they're not done yet. But yeah,
I feel like that was really something I had to wrestle with for I feel like I'm finally there 2 years later after like wrestling and working through it. Because that is who I was. And obviously I'm so much more than just that, but like that's who I was. And it's really interesting with Happy Happy Houseplant because my face is on it all the time. I do stories and I'm like in my in-feed posts. But I went through this like little transition where I had our icon as our profile picture and I switched it to my own picture and I hated it. It didn't feel right. It felt like I was making it more about me. And for me, Happy Happy Houseplant isn't about me and my ideas and my plants and my answers. It's about helping people. And so I changed it back, which I don't know. It was really interesting. That was like an interesting moment for me where I was like, I wonder why this feels so off.
Yeah, you're like settling into this new identity, right? The business model has changed, and that means that as creators, we identify a lot with our businesses. I mean, I have a tattoo of the logo of my first creator business that I sunset like a few years ago, and I wanted to like memorialize it, you know. We take on our business as our identity, for better or worse, some of the times. And so, yeah, I'm with you on that.
There's still times that I'm like, I want people to, like people who come to Happy Happy Houseplant don't know about Vintage Revivals.
I didn't.
Yeah, for real. Like, and sometimes it's hard for me because I want to be like, guys, like I know what I'm doing. And like, I have like credibility in this space. And I'm not just, I don't know. It's interesting. So I still like wrestle with that sometimes. Sometimes like if I'm showing something in our house and people are like, oh my gosh, what is this place? And then I'm like, oh, we did a show on Magnolia, like Vintage Revivals. Like it's, I don't know. It's weird.
You're like, oh yeah, I'm also a DIY blogger, you know, or
yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
I don't know how to balance it. Figuring it out still. And on Vintage Revivals, it was a lot more personal. Like we shared, my husband is a recovering addict. So he shared his story about recovery. We've shared stuff about our family. He would like dance on Instagram stories all the time, like shirtless, and was such a fun part of all of it. And he is not, like, we don't do that on Happy Houseplant. And so it also, I don't know. I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah. I'd imagine that that's for sure a double-edged sword, because you're removing, like, well, for one, like, Court is a people's favorite. Like, he's quite the entertaining character, and yeah, he's for sure the star of the show in a lot of the cases. And but having Happy Houseplant definitely does it takes you out, like you said, it takes you out, but it gives you something back. By taking you out of it, it gives you for sure like a part of you back. I imagine like a celebrity, you know what I mean? Like our filmmaker Henry always says, he's like, I want to be the guy at the table that is the most famous guy at the table, but nobody knows who I am. I'm like the richest, no one knows who I am. And then I get up and I leave, and he goes, and I'm around sitting with all these famous actors, and then all the people and paparazzi follow them, and I just walk home. He's like, that's who I want to be. Oh, I love that.
I literally take a nap every single afternoon. I never could do that when I was doing vintage revivals, because
that is a marker of success.
Yes. Yeah.
But like Happy Houseplant, I get to take a nap. It's the best. So
that's amazing. Yeah. Well, I think to wrap this up, this has been so amazing, but I think, you know, like when Mandi got emotional, I think that really summarized like the value of this episode, which is when you care about the content that you're creating for the people that you're creating for, that's going to come across, and that's going to ultimately be a mega marker of success, right? Or a differentiator of success. And when you are building a brand and you're building it around serving people, like the most successful people in the world, I would argue, are servant-hearted people, and creators tend to have that quality often. And I think that's one of the reasons why, quite honestly, ConvertKit's had as much success as it has, is because we build our business by creators, for creators, by creators. And Nathan, as a leader, is one of the most servant-hearted leaders that I've for sure ever worked for. And so I think that is a big differentiator and the biggest takeaway for me from this episode. So Mandi, you're amazing. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah. Wow. Our next, like, kind of little 2 bullet points. We've definitely, this might be our longest podcast episode yet. No surprise, because when Mandi and I talk, we'll like sit there and talk for hours. But normally we do a listener shout out, and I'm going to pull up this banner so you guys, this pretty link, so you can go on there, find yourself. For anybody that is not visually watching, it's
ConvertK.it/listener shout out.
It'll be in the show notes for sure. Go in there and submit some wins that you've had recently, so that way we can share with the community and they can check out your content. We would love that. And next week, we are going to be back up potentially we're kind of scheduling, figuring out if it's going to work, with hopefully our guest, Thomas Dillon, who is a producer and the engineer for all things creator sessions. He's also the other half of Alyssa. The other half of Alyssa, who handles deliverability defined, which y'all got to meet. Was it a couple weeks ago on the podcast. So all that said, we will see you, friends. Oh, Mandi, share where everybody can find you. Obviously, we've said Happy Houseplant 1,000 times, but tell the people.
Yep. happyhouseplant.com is our website and shop, and just Happy Houseplant everywhere, and Vintage Revivals also everywhere.
Yeah. And if you want to see the amazing stuff that she's built, like I said, go watch that Magnolia episode. What is it called? Turning old into new.
In with the Old. It's on Discovery Plus if you don't have cable.
Yeah, and you can get a good show of Court and their family and their beautiful house and this amazing living wall. Mandi, show your screen just a little bit so people can see the rest, like the plants to the side of you if they're watching.
This is my office.
Lovely.
Like, look at that! Holy cow!
I know. It's so fun.
I know. All right. Bye, friends.
See ya.
Bye. See you next week.